In a kingdom where power defines your worth, Paedyn Gray has survived her entire life by hiding the one truth that would get her killed instantly. She has none. In the kingdom of Ilya, power is not simply an advantage, it is a requirement. Society is built around it, structured by it, and enforced through it. Those born with abilities, known as elites, live with privilege and protection. Their strength earns them status, and their status gives them control. Everything in Ilya favors them. For those without power, there is no such safety. Ordinaries are not just overlooked, they are actively removed. The kingdom does not tolerate weakness, and it certainly does not protect it. Over time, this has created a world where being powerless is not just a disadvantage, it is a death sentence. Paedyn Gray exists in the narrow space between those two realities. She is ordinary, completely without power, and therefore someone who should not exist freely within Ilya. But she has survived by doing something far more difficult than fighting. She has remained unseen. Her life depends on careful observation, precise decisions, and constant awareness. Every word she speaks, every movement she makes is measured. She has learned to study people closely. The way they stand, the way they react, the way they use their abilities. She mimics confidence when necessary and disappears when attention becomes dangerous. It is not just about blending in. It is about understanding how the powerful think so she can avoid becoming a target. This kind of survival has shaped her into someone sharp and controlled. She does not take unnecessary risks. She does not trust easily. And she never forgets the consequences of being exposed. Her life in the lower parts of the city reflects that reality. Resources are limited, safety is uncertain, and every day carries a quiet tension. There are no guarantees. Only the understanding that she has made it this far by being careful, and that one mistake could undo everything. But no one can remain hidden forever. The turning point comes unexpectedly. In a moment that places Paedyn directly in the path of someone she has spent her entire life avoiding. Prince Kai. Kai represents everything the kingdom values. He is powerful, trained, and deeply connected to the system that governs Ilya. As a prince, his responsibilities are clear. He is expected to uphold the structure of the kingdom, to protect its ideals, and to eliminate threats to its stability. Someone like Paedyn would be considered exactly that, a threat. Their first encounter is not dramatic in the way stories often present such moments. Instead, it is subtle, built on observation and awareness. Paedyn notices him immediately, not because she is drawn to him, but because she understands what he represents. Being near someone like Kai is inherently dangerous. What she does not expect is that he notices her as well. At first, it is nothing obvious, a glance held slightly too long. A moment of attention that lingers just enough to feel intentional. For Paedyn, even that is enough to raise concern. She has survived by avoiding attention, and now she is being seen by someone who is trained to recognize irregularities. Kai is not easily fooled. He has spent his life reading people, identifying threats, and understanding the subtle differences between confidence and deception. Paedyn's behavior does not match what he expects from those around him. There is something controlled about her, something deliberate, and that difference stays with him. For Paedyn, this is the beginning of a shift she cannot fully control. She has always managed her environment carefully, staying within boundaries that keep her safe. But now, those boundaries are beginning to break. Not because she has changed her approach, but because the world around her is starting to move in ways she cannot predict. Her survival has always depended on remaining unnoticed. Now, that is no longer guaranteed. She was never meant to enter the trials, but now that she has, surviving them may be the only way to stay alive. The Purging Trials are one of the kingdom's most significant events. They are designed to identify strength, reward power, and reinforce the hierarchy that defines Ilya. For the elites, they are an opportunity to prove dominance, to gain recognition, and to rise higher within the system. For someone like Paedyn, they are something else entirely. A risk she should never have taken. Yet through a series of circumstances beyond her control, she is drawn into them. From the beginning, the imbalance is clear. The trials are structured for those with abilities. Every challenge assumes strength, speed, or some form of power that Paedyn does not possess. The other competitors rely on their gifts, confident in the advantages they have always known. Paedyn has none of that, but what she does have is experience. Not the kind the trials are designed to measure, but the kind that comes from surviving without protection. She understands unpredictability. She knows how to react when plans fail. She recognizes danger before it fully reveals itself. Where others rely on power, she relies on awareness. This difference does not make her stronger in the traditional sense. It makes her adaptable. And in an environment where overconfidence can be just as dangerous as weakness, adaptability becomes an advantage. Still, every moment in the trials increases the risk. She cannot hide forever in a setting built to expose limits. The more she succeeds, the more attention she draws. The more attention she draws, the harder it becomes to maintain her secret. Success, ironically, becomes dangerous, and throughout all of this, Kai is watching. Not constantly, not obviously, but enough for it to matter. His interest is no longer incidental. He begins to track her movements, to notice patterns, to question the inconsistencies that set her apart. He does not yet know the truth, but he knows something is different. Their interactions remain controlled, careful. Neither of them is willing to reveal too much. Paedyn cannot afford to. Kai, for his own reasons, does not push as directly as he could. Instead, he observes, gathering information, forming conclusions he has not yet spoken aloud. The trials continue, each stage more demanding than the last. Competitors are tested physically and mentally. Alliances form and break. Trust becomes a limited resource, used carefully and often withdrawn without warning. The environment is not just challenging. It is designed to create pressure, to force decisions, to reveal weaknesses. Paedyn navigates all of this with precision, but even precision has limits. The deeper she moves into the trials, the more she realizes that survival is no longer just about getting through each challenge. It is about managing everything at once: the competition, the attention, and the growing tension between herself and Kai. Because now, avoiding him is no longer possible, and being close to him is the most dangerous position she could be in. The longer she survives, the harder it becomes to stay invisible, and the more dangerous it is that he's starting to understand her. By the time the trials reach their later stages, Paedyn is no longer an unnoticed participant. She has lasted longer than expected, long enough for others to question how. In a system where power is visible, measurable, and often undeniable, her continued survival does not make sense. People begin to notice the gaps, small inconsistencies in how she reacts, how she moves, how she wins without ever clearly showing ability. To most, it is confusing. To someone like Kai, it is a pattern. He has spent his life learning how to identify weakness, deception, and hidden threats. It is part of his role, part of his training, and part of what makes him effective. Where others see coincidence, he sees intent. And Paedyn, despite all her caution, is becoming increasingly difficult to overlook. Their interactions begin to shift. At first, they were defined by distance, brief exchanges, controlled conversations, moments that could be dismissed as incidental. Now, there is a growing sense of awareness between them. Not comfort, not trust, but recognition. Kai begins to ask more direct questions. Not openly enough to expose her, but enough to test her responses. He watches how she answers, how quickly she adapts, whether she hesitates. Each conversation becomes a quiet exchange of strategy, where both of them are trying to understand how much the other knows. Paedyn responds the only way she knows how, with control. She gives him nothing she does not intend to give. She deflects when necessary, answers when required, and maintains the version of herself that has kept her alive. But the effort is becoming harder. Not because she is losing control, but because the situation itself is becoming more complex. Kai is no longer just a risk. He is becoming a factor she has to account for emotionally, not just strategically. That is something she has avoided her entire life. Trust in her world is not a comfort, it is a liability. The more someone knows about you, the more power they have over you. And Paedyn has built her survival on limiting what others can see. But Kai is persistent, not aggressive, not reckless, but attentive. He notices details others miss. He remembers small things. He pays attention not just to what she does, but how she does it. And slowly, without either of them fully acknowledging it, a connection begins to form. It is not built on openness, it is built on tension. On the understanding that both of them are holding something back. For Kai, that tension is intriguing. It challenges his expectations. It disrupts the clear structure of the world he understands. Paedyn does not fit into the categories he has been taught to rely on. For Paedyn, that tension is dangerous, because it creates moments where she almost forgets to be careful. Moments where she responds without calculation. Where she allows herself to engage, even briefly, without thinking about the consequences. Those moments do not last long, she always pulls back. But each time it happens, the risk increases. At the same time, the trials continue to push everyone toward their limits. The challenges become more intense, more unpredictable. Competitors are forced into situations where hesitation leads to failure, and failure often leads to elimination. The environment is no longer just testing ability, it is testing resilience. Paedyn continues to adapt. She studies each challenge quickly, identifies patterns, and finds ways to navigate them without exposing herself. Her strength lies not in overpowering obstacles, but in understanding them. This sets her apart, not in a way that makes her celebrated, but in a way that makes her difficult to categorize. And in Ilya, anything that cannot be clearly defined becomes a problem. The pressure begins to come from all directions, from the trials themselves, from the other competitors, and increasingly from Kai. Because now, he is not just observing, he is getting closer to an answer. He does not yet know that she is powerless, but he knows that something about her does not align with the world as he understands it. And he is not the kind of person who ignores that. For Paedyn, this creates a constant tension between two opposing needs. She needs to survive, and she needs to remain unseen. But the more she succeeds at one, the harder it becomes to maintain the other. The story, at this point, is no longer just about whether she can win or lose the trials. It is about whether she can continue to exist within a system that is slowly turning its attention toward her. Because in a world like this, being seen is not recognition, it is exposure. No matter how carefully you hide, there comes a moment when the truth is no longer yours to control. By the final stages of the trials, the balance Paedyn has maintained begins to break. Not all at once, not through a single mistake, but through accumulation. Small moments, small risks, small inconsistencies that over time become impossible to contain. She has survived longer than she should have. She has drawn more attention than she ever intended. And now, the space she once used to stay hidden has narrowed. The kingdom of Ilya is not built to tolerate uncertainty. It depends on clear divisions, elite and ordinary, powerful and powerless, worthy and expendable. Paedyn's existence challenges those divisions simply by not fitting into them. And systems like this do not adapt easily. They respond by closing in. Kai, by this point, is closer to the truth than ever before. He may not have all the answers, but he has enough to understand that Paedyn is not what she appears to be. The questions he once held back are now harder to ignore. The patterns he has observed no longer feel coincidental. Something about her is different, and that difference matters. For Paedyn, this is the most dangerous phase of all. Not because she is unprepared, but because there are too many variables she cannot control. The trials, the competitors, the expectations of the kingdom, and now, Kai's growing awareness. She can no longer rely on distance. She can no longer rely on being overlooked. Everything has narrowed to a point where a single moment could decide everything. This is where the emotional weight of the story becomes most clear. Paedyn is not just protecting a secret. She is protecting her right to exist in a world that has already decided she should not. And at the center of that tension is her connection with Kai. Because he is no longer just a risk to her safety. He is someone whose understanding could either destroy her or change the way he sees the world around him. That possibility is what makes the situation so complex. If he learns the truth, he is faced with a choice: to uphold the system he was raised to protect, or to question it. And Paedyn, whether she intends to or not, is the one forcing that question. The story does not resolve this tension easily. It does not present clear answers or simple outcomes. Instead, it builds toward a moment of realization. That power, as defined by Ilya, is incomplete. Because Paedyn, without any ability at all, has survived in a way that challenges everything the kingdom believes. She has endured through intelligence, restraint, and awareness. She has navigated a system designed to eliminate her. And in doing so, she has exposed its weaknesses. By the end, the trials are no longer the most important element. What matters is what has been revealed, about the kingdom, about its values, and about the people within it. Paedyn's story is not just about survival. It is about existing in a world that refuses to make space for you, and continuing anyway. And Kai's role is no longer just that of a prince within that world. He becomes someone standing at the edge of it, forced to decide whether he will continue to accept its rules or begin to question them.